Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Gareth, and this is the third entry into the Cloaked Protocol Devlog diaries. In this devlog, I experimented with exterior and interior transitions, getting the metrics right for the world I'm going to build, as well as getting a feel for the scale of everything. I also added fresh new animations, as well as spawning an actual weapon the player can hold. For those that are new here, Cloaked Protocol is a tactical stealth action espionage game where you play as Special Agent Raven to take down an organization called the Collective. Now, let's dive into the devlog. On the previous devlog, I dived into how I used scriptable objects to create my inventory system. I also created the basic template for equipping and unequipping of items, although I did not physically attach an item when the player selected an item from the inventory screen. I also broke down how I have two different inventory screens and how the items get stored into those inventory slots correctly, and how the stacking and usage of items work. In this devlog, I decided to focus on attaching the weapon to the player's hand in the game world, and have the players switch animations based on the item that is equipped. This is where things get a little tricky. I needed to add a second boolean or tick box to the scriptable objects to see if the weapon requires two hands to be wielded or if it's a one-handed weapon. Based on this, I could then change the type of animations that played should the player be holding a one-handed weapon or a two-handed weapon. This opens up so many possibilities, as I can simply just create a blend tree for weapon types like one-handed, two-handed, throwable, or consumable. Based on the item equipped, the player will move differently and will also hold the item differently. The next thing I really wanted to solve was changing levels and keeping all the settings. I had zero clue how to do this. With a little help of Google and a bunch of trial and error, I got to figure out that I can simply create a do not destroy on load script, and this gets attached to each and every item or parent item that I do not want to destroy on load. This way, it'll be very easy to manage scene transitions. The one thing that I'm really struggling with is when I transition back to a scene I came from, and it also does not destroy any scene items on load, and because I'm not using singletons anymore, I get duplicates in the scene that ends up breaking a bunch of things. I'm not worried about this for now, but I do think something I will need to deal with in the future devlog. But that brings me to the next topic. Let's talk a bit about what a metric jungle is. Most people know it by another word, blockout. But there is a big difference between a metric jungle and a blockout. A metric jungle is not a level and not a way to approach level design. Instead, a metric jungle is a way to collect information on how bigger walls, doors, windows, and tunnels should be. To be more specific, the idea is to see how wide the player is in units. This could be centimeters or meters. Based on the units of your character, you can then create templates for how high the walls should be relative to the character. This is important for later when the level design and block out of the levels come into play. Key points to take away here is 1. Make a metric jungle. It will help you establish a sense of scale and stick to that scale. 2. Blockouts of level can be sped up with well-investigated metrics using a metric jungle. 3. Do not mistake blockouts for metric jungles. They are completely different things. Cloaked Protocol is still very early in development, and I'm still building out the core features of the game. At the current point of development, I had a huge problem. The player will be able to run inside and outside of buildings. I'm sure you all can guess the issue. Camera angles. The thing is, the camera angle is really high, right? If the player goes into the building, the ceiling of the building will obscure the vision between the player and Raven, the character. The question is, how would I simulate what they did in Metal Gear Solid 1? I'm sad to admit that the answer is a lot easier than I thought. I'll be honest here and admit it took me far longer to figure out than it should have, given my background in 3D modeling and game-ready asset creation. The answer? Surface culling. Simply delete the top side of the roof and it will not draw onto the editor. It is literally black magic. In my previous devlog, I said that I really do not like Mixamo animations. Reason being, they are very generic and you can see them being used in a lot of solo indie game projects. I decided to buy a few packs of animations from all over the internet and replace the current Mixamo animations with the newly bought animations. I have now replaced the idle, walk, run, and crouch animations. There are a bunch more to come that I will be incorporating into the game, but I am happy I got away from Mixamo animations somewhat. Sadly, I am still using Mixamo anims for the wall hug, but I will be removing them in time. Now, it's time to switch gears for more fun development updates. But first, if you have not yet, please consider hitting the like button, turning on the notification bell, and hitting the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. I try to release devlogs every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the development goals reached. Now, back to the video. Now that some of the boring stuff are out of the way, I would like to showcase the attaching and removing of items from the player's hand. At the moment, I only focus on single-handed weapons like a pistol. I'm still playing around with how the player will hold the weapon, but for now I think it feels right to stay true to real-world expectations and have the player hold the weapon in the right hand and brace with the left. I like how it looks and I like how it makes the character seem strong and sturdy, but there are some alignment issues I need to sort out. I think it's safe to say that I hate working with animations. Okay, rant over. So as mentioned before, an item gets given a scriptable object, and the object holds a reference to the prefab that I need to use to spawn the weapon into the hand of the player. I then added a weapon slot to the rig of the player's right hand, more specifically in the palm of the character, and I adjusted the slot to make the weapon look and feel correct when being held. I then added an empty game object into the grip of the prefab weapon to show Unity editor where the grip of the weapon is. This way I can just spawn the weapon as a child of the weapon slot, but have the weapon grip and palm game object align, and have the weapon look correct in the player's hands. I'll be doing this with 300 weapons, however, I will attach a second grip slot onto the prefab to show where the second hand of the player should attach to. More on that in future devlogs. Now it's onto aiming of the character body to react more like you have come to know and expect from more modern AAA games. Admittedly, I've not gotten this working 100% yet, and I feel like animations just seem to behave incorrectly. However, I created a 3D world space script to get the center of the screen. I then raycast from the camera to the center of the screen. In this instance, it's where the crosshair is. And if I return a hit, then the character will look in that direction. This is also how I'll be handling the shooting and calculating if I have hit an NPC or not. I'll be tweaking this a lot during development, and I think I want to look at turning IK off for the legs and feet while the character aims and moves about with the top half of the body. But I digress. This was all possible using a package called Animation Rigger. It's really cool package that has step-by-step instructions to overlay IK animations on top of already animated bones and joints to get the IK movement of the hand and hips working for aiming, opening doors, picking up items, and many other things. As I learn more about the Animation Rigger, I will be more confident to talk about it in future devlogs, but for now, I know just enough to get it working for my use case. Finally, I would like to talk about tech debt. Tech debt grows extremely fast, and for those that do not know what it is, I'll explain super fast. Tech debt is when you code without following good practices, architectural design patterns, or simply hard code values like player speed, fall damage height, weapon damage, player health, etc. This all makes tweaking, changing, and expanding of features so much more difficult and time consuming. Tech debt also comes in the form of who is listening, nor do they care. The car can tune into the station, or it can just keep the radio off. Events work the same way. A player can walk through a door, an event gets triggered. A radio signal gets broadcasted, and all the classes that are listening to this event can then do something like play music, spawn enemies, half the player's health, disable weapons in an area. This is super cool because other classes are not subscribed or listening to the event do not care about it. This way you can decouple code and make it reusable, and should you delete an entire class, the code and therefore the game should still work. And that is it for this devlog entry. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end of this video. I would love it if you could give this video a thumbs up. Please feel free to have a look at my other devlogs, as I try to post shorts weekly during the development process and in between devlogs. Until next time, bye.